welcome, everybody. You are watching the Couples Academy Show. My name is Coach Danny Pettiford.
And I'm Hassani.
Welcome to the show. Today we have a hot topic. We're continuing with this identity crisis series, and we're talking about midlife crisis and infidelity, navigating those turbulent times. And so we're kind of dialing in, right, to what we typically talk about is infidelity. But before we get into the topic, don't forget, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You won't miss a show. Don't forget to share it with all your friends and your family. But we're excited about diving into this topic because this is literally right in our smack dab in our wheelhouse, right? We were talking about identity crisis, but identity crisis leads us in so many different directions. And one of those places that we can land when we're having an identity crisis is in a midlife crisis and in infidelity.
Absolutely. And when a person experiences an identity crisis at the halfway mark of their lives, all of a sudden they begin to look at things different, reevaluate things. Do I even want this relationship? Like all these years I've been looking at my life and looking at the roles that I've been playing, and I may want something new. And it causes a crisis within the person, but it also causes a crisis to the person who's married to the person experiencing the crisis. And then the family begins to experience a crisis. So your internal crisis, it's almost like taking a soda can, shaking it up, opening it up, and then it just
here it is, take it all,
the place.
Right? And all that bubble and all that mess, there's no control in it, is it?
No.
It's like an avalanche or a volcano of mess all over the place, and the people around you are like, whoa, it's getting all on their sweater and
Absolutely.
on their shirt and everything like that. What a good analogy.
And so this is why we do what is called the Last Chance Weekend. Every single month, the second weekend of the month, couples from all over the country, all over the world fly in because they are in crisis. And so if that is you, it is not too late. Listen, we're having our Last Chance Weekend. It is the 10th through the 12th. It is not too late. People sometimes call in the day before to see if they can find some space to get here.
We create space.
We create space. So listen, just go to the video description, click on the link, set up a discovery call, and let's get into it. But also, Danielle, I'm excited because you just started an amazing class last night. Talk about it really quickly.
We just started the Unearth 2.0 course. It is a cohort of women that are going through it together for 12 weeks where women are working really hard on rediscovering their purpose and their passion and unearthing past traumas that have held them back. So it is an amazing, powerful class. I don't know, maybe this is the 20th iteration of this. We've been doing it for about 3 years, and it's amazing. So listen, we're just getting started. Yesterday was the first class. This is your last opportunity to jump in. Literally, I always preserve the first week for latecomers and newcomers. If you get in this week, you are in. If not, we have to seal the group because those ladies go off and they become literal sisters.
Absolutely.
Like they become like a family. It's incredible. So if you're interested, go to couplesacademy.org and check out our events. You'll see it listed right there. Also, I don't want to forget, we have the webinar coming up on February 1st. You can register also. You can go to couplesacademy.org to find out more about this. But we have this webinar. It's called the Find Your Spark webinar. And it is for wives who have literally lost their spark, right? Like you have been a mother, you have been a wife, you've been a sister, a daughter. You've done all the things for everybody else. You've got passions, you've got dreams that you've kicked down the street, kicked the can down the street, and now you're ready to step back into those things. So in that webinar, it's 3 hours. It's on a Saturday. We're going to do a deep dive to help you rediscover what those passions are and then launch a project, a passion project that's all about you into the world. So don't miss that opportunity.
All right, guys, listen, we're going to dive into today's conversation once again, the midlife crisis and infidelity. Now, of course, when an affair takes place, there's a lot of similarities in terms of behavior. So whether you're in your affair because of a midlife, whether it's has nothing to do with that. We know that there are several categories, if you will, of infidelity, but we want to talk about what is it that thrusts someone into this type of an affair and what are the behaviors associated with it. So let's go down this list. Number one, I think we need to understand that impulsivity is one of the characteristics of the midlife affair. Let's explain what that means. This is the type of affair that it wasn't brewing for a while. It's not like you couldn't have seen it coming. There weren't necessarily signs. There weren't behaviors that you were observing, and then all of a sudden it went too far and boom, they're into it. With this type of affair, it begins instantly. There's no planning. There's no thought of the consequences. Because a person who's experiencing a midlife, they're driven by their emotions. So it's emotionality, not rationality. And so they're thrusted into these behaviors without their own awareness. And then boom, it's just like, how did I get here? And so a lot of times when it comes to these emotionally driven affairs, it is driven by the idea of, well, listen, I deserve to be happy. Because I've been taking on these responsibilities for all these years.
Yeah.
I've been serving everybody else. I've been doing all the right things, and it's time for me. And that mindset drives them to be involved in a very selfish, self-centered act that compromises the integrity of their marriage, their family, and everything else.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I could see that happening, especially for wives. And actually, if we could just kind of park here for a minute, because it makes me think about, maybe it was a midlife crisis that I was having, when we had been working together, Hassani and I, side by side, almost 20 years, maybe a little bit less than that now, because we've only been married 22 years, but say maybe it's 15 years straight. And I was experiencing a tremendous amount of burnout, being a mother. We have 4 children, running a business together, just nonstop. And everybody who knows us knows we're like hustle and flow. And I remember making a decision. I don't think it was impulsive. It was definitely calculated, but I made the decision to take a whole year off. Now, the cool thing about that is that you were right there with me and you could see the wear and tear, right? That my creativity had been sapped and zapped, right? I could not produce the way that I was producing. I was running on fumes. And so there was support there. But I can imagine how if there's no support, and somebody is making an impulsive decision that could be a crisis. Like, think of it like this, because these things happen too, where somebody comes home from work and says, I quit my job, I don't want to do this anymore. And you're the main breadwinner. That is going to be a problem.
For sure.
In our situation, we basically had expanded our business. We had practitioners in place, I knew that this was my chance. You know what I'm saying? This was my chance to get my life and get my head and, actually focus in on what really mattered to me, which at that season, I've got these young girls that are like transitioning and they're in high school and they're graduating and all that. And that's where I wanted my head to be. And so in many regards, it could be something like that, right? Like where you actually make a decision for yourself, but sometimes it has a tremendous negative effect on everybody else. I think we were okay.
Exactly.
But it made me think about that. I can totally identify with that feeling. I think it's about how you do it.
And I think this is why conversations are important. And usually, think about it. An affair, not that there was any, but I see how you're tying it in. An affair is very selfish. You're not sitting down with your spouse saying, hey, listen, this is what I want to do for me, so are you okay? Or whether you are or not, I'm doing it. But if that is one of the main drivers, then you have to have these conversations because it will prevent a potential affair from occurring, right? That's the key.
And I think also, Hassani, to your point, like when it comes to an affair, like, that's what you need to do to get your life? Like, that's what you've been holding yourself back from? That's your midlife crisis? Like, it speaks to where your heart and mind has been for a long time. It's beyond, let me rescue myself. Like, let me pause. I've been running around doing everything for everybody else. Let me go get my prostate checked finally. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you're doing something for yourself to protect yourself, to preserve yourself. It's more so, well, it is about yourself, but it's a negative thing, right?
Of course.
Like you have been thinking about ruminating on what you would do if people didn't know about it, what you would do if you were bold enough. And then you get to this midlife crisis and you get bold and start doing crazy, destructive things that are going to destroy your future together. And we could go there, but we'll get there.
Well, see, that's the thing. If it's an identity crisis, if it's a midlife crisis, what I've identified with for the last 10, 15, 20 years is this guy, is this version of myself.
And nobody knew. Like, oh, that's what you've been thinking? Because it all starts with a thought. Like every action that you take, everything that you do, nothing comes out of nowhere. Oh, it came from somewhere. It was deep seated inside of you, and you've been ruminating, and you've been emotionally and mentally and maybe visually, because there's porn and video and things of that nature, watering those seeds of destruction. And so you get to a prime state right there in that midlife where the fruit has arrived and it's destructive.
But going back to the point, the question is, well, this role that I've been playing, have I been an actor in a bad movie and I'm playing a role that doesn't reflect who I really am? Or was I actually that person and now I want to escape from what I've always identified with to now play a role that I've never played before, right? And so that's what happens in this identity crisis. And so oftentimes, think about it, one of the other behaviors or characteristics of a midlife crisis is a person who escapes from routine. That's what they're looking to do. I've been doing this all of my life, and now I'm ready for a shift. I'm ready for a change. And when we think about the person who wants to escape from a routine, maybe they're trapped in the monotony of every day, the unfulfilling responsibilities, duties, and obligations and routines of every day. And it's not about, see, you have to understand, when it comes to an affair, it's what the affair represents. It's what the affair brings. The affair brings a sense of excitement. The affair brings a sense of something new, of something different. The affair allows me to become distracted from all the things and obligations that I have at home. It is an escape from my everyday. And so this is why we say it's important to realize that the affair, for most people, is not about the sex. It manifests into that. That's one of the byproducts of it, and it becomes very sexual. But usually that's not the main driver, and we know that because when we talk about the 8 components of the dangerous partner profile and what draws people away, it is an emotional thing, something internal that drives them out, and they wind up in compromising situations where sex occurs. But if the affair represents thrill, if it represents excitement, if it's a contrast from the realities of what we have at home, of course, I'm thrusted into a space that gives me personal fulfillment, so one thinks, even though it may be temporary, but that is the root cause for many people. I'm escaping from a reality because guess what? I need to identify with a different version of myself that's been lying dormant, or I want to now create a different version because as I sit here in my dungeon, my prison, my cage called marriage, I'm looking out and seeing everybody up in these streets having fun, having a good time. I want to have some fun too. So I'm looking for it as an escape from my reality. Now, it's interesting. We talk about how many people perceive marriage as a cage. It's something that confines me. It's something that imprisons me if you're looking at it the wrong way. If you were inside of a cage, inside of the jungle, well, that cage is now a form of protection. It's protecting you from the elements of the world, the lions, the tigers, the bears. And oftentimes, if we're looking at our marriage the wrong way, that becomes a driver into bad behavior, and escapism is one of those things. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Now, let's go to the third one, because the third one is really critical. It's it's a projection of idealism. This is huge.
Okay.
Because oftentimes when we're in the affair, we idolize the affair partner. Mm-hmm. So now we're talking about comparison. I'm comparing this affair partner to my wife, to my husband, and I'm like, listen, this is so much better because my spouse gets on my nerves. All we do is argue. She doesn't do this, she doesn't do that. And so I have an idealized idea of who this affair partner is. Now, here's the challenge. It's fake, it's false, it's fictitious.
Of course it's fake,
because
it's
that's
false.
Not who she really is.
Of course. And anytime you're in a situation like that, of course, you've got your wife of 30, 40 years, because we're talking midlife crisis. Well, maybe not that long, 20, 25, 30 years. Here you are in a midlife crisis, and you're judging everything that your wife isn't. And you've stopped considering all the things that she is. And here you go out in these streets and you find somebody who's got a few elements but none of the other, right? That's when they talk about that 20/80, right? So it's like your wife is probably 90, by the way, anyway. And then you've got this chick out on the side that's 20%. But if you had to do anything long-term, build anything long-term, you would be at a loss, because that's not what she's going to bring to the table. So yeah, it's idealizing this fictitious imagined version of what you think you're supposed to have. And you haven't understood the richness that you've developed over the course of that time. That's not talking about, the fact that every couple has issues and every husband has a problem that needs to be worked on, and wife as well. But when you look at what your wife brings to the foundations of your life, if you had to throw all of that into a pot and try to exchange it for those few little idealized elements that you are looking for, you would be out in the cold and homeless, a crumbling foundation. I talk about this a lot. We've actually shared this in another podcast where we were just talking about how much a wife brings to your marriage, right? God said it's not good for man to be alone. And so I will create him a suitable helper, someone who is complete, will support, will protect, will be the person that rides side by side with this person. But in real life, we see how this takes place. In real life, we see how a marriage is a foundation. It's not just the little things that we do or do not do. It's an entire foundation. And so in your midlife, when you step out and you literally crush the foundation that was built. And we all have our own stories, right? My story with Hassani and I is completely different than yours, of the foundation that was built to get us to here. If midlife crisis struck and he were to step out and I were not able to sustain that and were to leave, the level of destruction this man would have, or any man would invite into their lives. When they see the umbrella of grace has closed, packed up, and moved away, they would then be able to acknowledge it. And I think it's something that we should definitely go into deeper teaching to help people understand what is involved. What did you actually create and build over the course of this marriage that is worth protecting, so that when you get to the midlife crisis, because everybody's going to get there, and you start looking at the things that you hate and don't like, of course you're going to look at your spouse. Of course there's going to be some things that frustrate you, right? But we want to ensure that you don't make toxic decisions that you can't come back from, because that is one of the things that is a real struggle at that age in particular, when you're supposed to be sitting in a rocking chair and getting ready to see the sunset set, right? And now you're dealing with infidelity at this big age. That's not cool.
Here's the problem. All these things are occurring. It goes back to what we always say. Couples aren't talking. They're not having these conversations. I know we talk about workday, play day, and it's you've become numb to it sometimes when you're hearing the same thing again and again and again. But even outside of that, sitting down and having conversations to tell your spouse, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through.
Yeah, and be honest.
Because we say this all the time. I'm talking to you, but I'm also having a conversation with myself, and I'm telling myself the truth, and I'm telling you the lie, giving you a false perception of what's really going on. Yeah. So you have no clue. I can't tell you how many wives have sat on our couch and said, but why didn't you tell me?
Why didn't you tell me?
Why didn't you tell me what was going on with you? And a lot of men who unfortunately either A, don't know how to communicate, or choose not to communicate, emotionally disconnect from their spouse. They're not getting the need met because they're not articulating what it is that they want. Or maybe they've been complaining and they've shown some frustrations, but it's almost like, unless we have to sit down and have a real conversation and we bring everything to the table. Yeah, I heard your complaints, but I wasn't connecting those dots to you've just reached your boiling point and you're out. This is why you have to sit down and have these conversations.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I think also getting counseling, because we may not be crystal clear on whether or not our thinking is right or wrong. We may not know that some of the desires that we have that are genuine, authentic desires, like this is something that I really want. And I have shared this with my husband. This is something that I really want. And I've been talking to him for 10, 15 years. He's never going to give it to me. He's never going to do it for me. You could switch sides if it's a male, listen to it, thinking about his wife. But whatever it is that you've been saying, I need this and I want this as a wife. I need this, I want this as a man. And it's been 15 years, you're never going to get it. But then you decide, I'm going to go get it. Like, bump you. I'm done talking to you. I'm going to go get it. You may not be able to recognize that that's not right thinking. And sometimes you need to get into the hands of some good counseling and coaching so that somebody can help you recognize, dude, no, let me help you. You should not be thinking this way, right? That's to say, like, every single solitary thing in life you should get. Is that a reality? Do we get every single solitary thing that we want? As a wife, do you give every single solitary thing that your husband wants? So then why should you expect that he give you every single solitary thing that you should want? Some of these things, the completion that you're looking for needs to come from within. And we don't recognize that there are so many broken places on the inside of us that we're desiring the wrong thing. We have skewed lenses. We can no longer perceive the blessings and the good thing, that what you have is somebody's dream. Somehow for you has become a nightmare because you're missing like 5%. And so you're going to do something destructive that destroys your legacy because you're after the 5%, leaving behind 95%.
It's distorted thinking, right? And so if I'm not talking to you and I'm having internal conversations with myself, the questions that I ask myself, I'm answering for myself. Right? And so I'm forming conclusions, making assumptions, and I'm emotionalizing how I think, which drags me into a pit, an emotional pit. And then I'm going to make decisions. And guess what? If I'm not talking to you, one thing about an affair, when an affair is new, I'm having conversations with my affair partner, and oh my God, she just understands me. Man, I wish my wife could be what this one is, but because she's not, now I'm drawing this huge comparison and this huge stark difference, which then reinforces and justifies why what I'm doing, maybe not okay, but guess what? It serves me. And I'm gonna go where I'm gonna be served. Think about going into a restaurant and getting poor treatment, and then you go into another restaurant, the food may not be as good, or it could just be okay, but the treatment is so amazing that is where you stay. So you're creating these false narratives in your mind. You're disconnecting from your spouse. There's no longer a window between you. There's a wall that is built up between you. So you have these barriers and these parameters that keep you from connecting and establishing intimacy. You're not spending time together. You don't have routines together. You work different shifts, or guess what? You're in the bedroom. I'm sleeping in the other bedroom. There's a complete disconnect. And then physical distance creates emotional distance, which creates you thinking certain thoughts in your mind, and now you've drifted away without actually entering into the affair. But because you've drifted so far, you can now justify the affair that you're in. This is what we're seeing. These are the steps that we take us from where we were to where we are, and we think, well, my God, how did I get here? It was subtle. It was step by step, but you couldn't see the steps because you were in the midst of a drift. Guys, this is deep.
And I got to acknowledge this comment here because I just saw it. It's from Beauty of Love T. Jones. She says, how do you get past what they have done, even if you're trying to make your marriage work? And I think that's a powerful question. And that's what we specialize in, because see, the thing is that people, they think that they could repair their marriage on their own, but you can't be the rule one of your own destruction and devastated situation, right? So it doesn't matter if you were the one who was the offender or not. You can't be the rule one in that conversation. You need to go to somebody who is a rule one, who has been where you are, who knows the way out and knows how to show the way out. And so it's really about getting in the hands of the appropriate counseling and coaching and support to walk you through a process of recovery, acknowledging that it is a process. It is a journey. And the sooner you get on it, the faster you can recover.
Listen, the fact of the matter is we've been doing this work with couples for a long time. And so it's a very good question, and it's a question that so many people are asking who find themselves in this situation. Listen, there's so much more we're going to unpack in this conversation. We just hit 3 to 4 points, and we're going to continue this tomorrow. But before we close out today's show, I want you, because many people have been watching us for years and have gone to other counselors because they didn't realize that this is what we actually do.
Absolutely.
So I want to go to this quick commercial. We'll be right back in just a second before we end the show.
Yeah. welcome back, guys. And we got another question from Ella. Really good question. She asks us, should I take a sorry from my spouse as genuine without them wanting to talk about the what and why they did cheat?
Keep your sorries. Keep your sorries. It reminds me of that movie, For Color Girl. I forget
For Color Girls.
Yeah, Janet Jackson's in the movie.
That poem was hot.
So the husband is on one end of the bed and the wife is on the other, and he says, "I'm sorry," and that's all it was. It was empty words, and she was just like, "I'm sick and tired of your sorries. You've been saying sorry about this and sorry about that, but where is the action?" See, sorry has to come with a repentant heart and behavior, and that means a change, a shift, no longer engaging in certain behaviors, but also the sorry has to be associated with a conversation. What are you asking? Mm-hmm. Like when you say sorry for what? What did you do? Let's talk it through. Yeah. I just can't give you, yes, I forgive you, let's move on, and we haven't had conversations to prevent these type of things from happening in the future.
Absolutely. And I want to come back to Beauty, who said, I did, and it's her really trying to recover, and this is why you have to continue the journey. This is why I created the Unearth program, because there were many wives who, after the infidelity, after the recovery, they were going through the process, they were doing the things, right, which do lead to recovery over time. However, they still felt broken. They still felt disconnected. They still dealt with triggers every single day. So the journey doesn't stop, right? I mean, if you stop learning, you start digressing. If you stop working out at the gym, your muscles get weak. You have to continue the journey. And so that's what we have Unearthed. I dropped the link in there. Click the link, research it, join Unearthed. It's a program. It's 12 weeks. It will help you recover from the inside out, so that now it's not about everything you're pulling out because all the hurts and the wounds that were on the inside of you. It's now you showing up as a stronger person, having learned from your experiences. So keep fighting the good fight, Miss, I forget the name, but it was interesting, Miss Beauty.
And guys, keep tuning in, right? The more you water your garden with this information, breakthrough is going to come. But then you got to take it to the next level and do something about it. Listen, tune in tomorrow. We're going to continue this conversation. Love you all. See you in the morning.
See you tomorrow.